All right, everybody, welcome back to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by Deck Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. And it hasn't quite been 2 weeks since the Steelers were, let's just say dumped out of the playoffs by the Cleveland Browns. And there has been a lot of stuff going on. And today was a prime example of that because there were numerous things happening today on the South Side. Coaches being interviewed, players being signed. And boy, I tell you, Steelers Twitter. We're a unique bunch, let me tell you. To break it all down, we have usual suspects. Ian and Ben are with me tonight, and also longtime friend of the show, Ryan Scarpino, is with us as well. Ryan used to be entrenched with the Steelers in the PR department there, so he's got a great insight. And really, Ryan, what I should have done, I should have had you come on with you doing your Troy Polamalu impersonation, because our Ellie Finnerty is in love with the man, and if she thought we were interviewing him and didn't invite her on, she would have gone insane. But Ryan, how are you, man? It's great to talk to you again.
Appreciate the invite. As soon as you said Troy, I just, God willing, thank you. But if Hall of Famer Troy Polamalu, it's been a long time since I've been on the show, a couple years, but yeah. rightfully so. Troy into the Hall of Fame, and what a great guy he was. He is probably somewhere very nice right now, riding out this pandemic, and good for him. He deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. We all do, but some of us don't quite have those options. But but more power to those that do, for sure. So Ryan, just let me get your thoughts, and then we'll break down a little bit of what went on today. And I wish I could say we planned this. It just so happened it was a busy day in Pittsburgh for the Steelers, and it fits perfectly into our recording schedule. But Ryan, we haven't talked since the season ended, and this team was 11-0. And what was kind of going through your mind when they were 11-0? Did you see chinks in the armor? Did you feel real confident? What was going through your
head? 11-0 is 11-0,
yeah.
as Mike Tomlin would say. But I tweeted this out. Prior to the Washington game, they were 6-0 in one possession games, and that was one of the best records that they've had in recent years. 2017, they were actually 8-3 in one possession games. So, let's just split the difference: 3-3 in those six. They were 6-0. Let's just say they're 3-3. I would have felt a lot better being 8-3 than 11-0, and I think that gave all of us hope. Yeah. I really didn't know what to expect coming into the season because of COVID. I fully thought that the season would be delayed in some sort of way. So, kudos to the NFL for getting all those games in. Whether I know some teams were impacted by it, and that's unfortunate. But I'm looking at the schedule right now, and I want to point to a game, but I'm not saying anything that probably 99% of Steelers fans are thinking, but that Ravens COVID game, they squeaked it out, but the Ravens weren't at full strength by any means, but no. you just saw a pattern that had been ailing the Steelers for about 5-6 games right now. They weren't able to run the ball. They were turning the ball over a lot. I'm sorry. The defense was getting turnovers. Yeah. But the defense wasn't able to stop the run. And then even being up big against the Washington football team and losing that, and then the Buffalo loss, and then losing at the Bengals, and then it's like, okay, they're going to turn this around, but long-winded. It stinks. It's disappointing.
Yeah.
I think that most people expected a loss at Kansas City, because that's what the narrative was the whole time.
Yeah.
Let's see them play the Chiefs. Let's see what they can do against Mahomes and company. And even up that week up to the Cleveland game, I'm like, this is going to be close. I don't think Cleveland went all out in that final game. I think that Chubb only had, I think, 13 carries. Like there was, I think they were just squeaking by as much as the Steelers were trying to just rest their guys. But Cleveland, 28-0 in the first quarter.
I know.
Oh my God! I mean, and kudos to the Browns. I've been saying for years now. Good. I want them to be competitive again. It's good for the North, and
it is.
I think the North is going to be a really, really good division for a long time. But it stinks the way it ended. But I can't put my finger on all the things that happened. But you point to the lack of run game.
Mm-hmm.
The defense was having trouble stopping the run, and it just looked like they ran out of gas. They just looked tired.
I think that's a good point. And I think that's something that often gets overlooked. That we can talk till we're blue in the face. They didn't get a traditional bye week this year because of the way things broke with COVID, and those things add up. And you look at the injuries that they did sustain and the bumps and the bruises. And as they say in the game of football, nobody's 100% when you get into the playoffs. I mean, it's just fact of the matter. But yeah, they did. They looked a little slow. A little tired, and I would agree with that.
Brian brought up a good point too that I want to mention about the one score games, because there's been some research done that teams that have a big disparity in their record in one score games usually regress towards the mean the next year, whether it's they win a bunch more or they lose a bunch more.
That's right.
I remember we talked about this on the podcast a few years ago after the Steelers went 13-3 and won a bunch of one score games, and then bottomed out against Jacksonville in the playoffs when they went down 21-0 in the first quarter. Sounds very similar, right? But the teams that win a bunch of one score games one year tend to get back towards that 50-50 split the next year, and that takes you from potentially a 13-3 team to like an 11-5 team or a 10-6 team. So Ryan's point about the one score games is really well taken. That's really well put.
Yeah, it is. I recall us talking about that, Ian, as a matter of fact, and thought of it when Ryan was talking about it. So we've said it so many times on this show that the game of football, especially when you get to the NFL, games are literally decided by a couple of plays. 70, 80 plays are run per game. And really that's what it comes down to. A couple plays a game. Now those plays might happen in the second quarter or the third quarter, but that's what it comes down to. And either you're on the good side of it or you're not. So Ben, let me bring you in here because I can hear you in the background sipping your whiskey, and I'm afraid you're going to pass out before I get to you. Lots of stuff going on today in Pittsburgh. And let me just give the timeline, and then I'll hand it over to you. We got wind that the Steelers were going to interview Hugh Jackson, the former Browns head coach, for the offensive coordinator position. And then we heard that Dwayne Haskins, the former number one first round draft pick, I should say, of the Washington football team. Sorry.
Technically, they were the Redskins when they picked them. So
that's true. Thank you.
You're not fully wrong there.
Right. It's just when you've been calling a team the same thing for the last 50 years, it kind of sticks.
San Diego Chargers.
Exactly. I'll still call them that. Yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah. Oakland Raiders. We Las Vegas. Give me a break.
My dad still calls the Colts Baltimore from time to time, so it's all good.
Now that's one I did adjust to. We got word that Haskins was in town. Then we heard that Haskins signed. And then just a short time ago, we heard that the Steelers want to talk to Pep Hamilton, who most recently was working with Justin Herbert out there in Los Angeles with the Chargers. So there's a ton of stuff going on. Ben, start with Hugh Jackson. What is this all about? Because I thought we had selected Matt Canada and that was done.
Well, a couple of things. First, Tomlin has noted that he wants to hire an offensive line coach, settle on that first, and then finalize his OC pick, his offensive coordinator. And I don't know where he's at in that process. Obviously, neither do you. But so he's talking to Hugh Jackson. There is a hiring initiative in the NFL right now, league-wide, that basically says you need to interview a minority candidate. And hopefully, Tomlin's not the kind of guy who's just going to give somebody
I don't think so either.
A check mark interview to make sure he satisfies a requirement. But Hugh Jackson, I thought was say what you want, not a great head coach, but as an offensive coordinator in particular in Oakland, a very creative guy. And I wasn't necessarily up in arms about the fact that Tomlin wanted to talk to him. I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, this is a guy who designs his offense around the skills of his players instead of saying to the players, you're going to fit my offense, which may be something that the Steelers are going to need going forward. Sure. So not a big deal. Pep Hamilton, I don't know what to make of that. I made some inquiries this evening. Somebody got back to me and said, everybody still thinks Canada's got it, but nobody really knows. Nobody knows for sure. So I don't know what to make of that. We'll see. As far as the Haskins signing, that is nothing. I don't know why Steelers fans get so up in arms about every single signing.
Yes, you do.
My God. This is a guy who's number 3 in the depth chart right now on a reserve futures contract, which is the same contract they give guys on the practice squad.
Yeah.
And he's got basically a prove it or lose it deal. I mean, they ventured nothing by signing him. He got no bonus, no nothing. He's got to show up for camp and prove himself. If he can make the team, he's on a 1-year minimum deal.
Yeah.
This is so low risk. It doesn't mean a damn thing. If Josh Dobbs signs tomorrow, he's number 4 on the depth chart.
Yep.
It's not like they signed this guy to start. So I don't know what the big deal is. I don't know why people get so worked up over shit like this.
I tend to think it's just simply because of how he was let go from Washington. It's like, oh, geez, we got another one of these kind of guys coming in here.
He's kind of an idiot. I mean, he's kind of a knucklehead. Let's be honest. I mean, you know what you're supposed to do. They all knew, as the Steelers put it, when the Ravens got in trouble. They all knew what they were supposed to do. I'm sorry, that was the Titans. When the Titans got in trouble, because you only have a COVID breakout if you're playing the Steelers this season.
That seemed to be. Yeah.
When the Titans got in trouble, what they said was, we all knew what we were supposed to do from day 0, all of us. And if these guys were breaking protocol, they're idiots. And Haskins broke protocol and obviously got in trouble for it. And then supposedly the last game he played there in Washington, they didn't think that he was very well prepared mentally to play the game. And as a result, they cut him. It wasn't so much about his performance as much as his preparation. So he's an immature guy. He's got some issues. Obviously a very talented guy. And the Steelers want to see if they can redeem him. And, to me, venturing nothing to gain a quarterback who maybe shouldn't have been a first rounder, but is still a very talented guy.
Agree.
Is a pretty good bet.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I'm not thrilled with, some of the decisions, but at the same time, as you mentioned, it's a zero risk thing for the Steelers. And if he turns out to be somebody they end up relying on down the road for, as a backup or whatnot, then great. And if not, then it really doesn't cost them anything. Ryan, when the Steelers do something like bring in a Pep Hamilton, a Hugh Jackson, I mean, did you ever get the feeling when you were there that this is a matter of fact thing, or is there real intent here by Mike Tomlin to actually consider these guys for the job?
I mean, I can't tell you the number of free agents that visited that didn't sign, but it never made it to Twitter. I mean, that was probably way before it was before social media is what it is now. But there are plenty of times that the Steelers did their due diligence and brought a player in or a coach in. Some teams announce everything, some teams didn't. Steelers like to keep their hand. They don't want to show their hand, but I was looking at Hugh. So here's the thing about Hugh Jackson, and I totally understand why that was the first sort of first news today, is that Hugh Jackson was, at one point was 1-31 as a head coach of the Cleveland Browns, and he was fired in his third year. And I think that those lasting snippets of him sort of, butting heads with Todd Haley and Greg Williams on Hard Knocks, that's what people remember about Hugh. But he was coordinator in Oakland in 2010, and they were sixth in the league in points. And then in 14 and 15 with Cincinnati, they were 15th in points and then 7th in points. So I mean, he's done well as a coordinator. I think he's a veteran coach. And then I didn't really know anything about Pep Hamilton, but he was the Colts OC from 2013 to 2015. First 2 years with the Colts, they were 11-5 both years, lost to the Patriots both years in the playoffs. Andrew Luck played every game in those 2 years. And in that 2014 season, they were third in yards, sixth in points. And then his final year with the Colts, they were 8-8, but Luck was hurt. So, and then look, 31 touchdowns this past year with Justin Herbert in 15 games. Ben had 33 in 15 games. So, Pep's a little bit young. I don't know exact ages, but Hugh has more professional experience. But listen, Mike Tomlin has said this many, many times. You're not here for charity. Obviously Mike has relationships with these guys in some form or fashion. So I think they're both qualified, but I think this is are they bringing in someone thinking of the future, or are they bringing in someone because this may be Ben's last year, or is it both? And I think that's something that they absolutely need to think about at this time, because as we all know, I don't know how many more years Ben has in him.
No, I none of us do, and he's going to keep us in limbo. I think he enjoys the fan base being in constant limbo. And Ian, that's something I was going to ask you about is, with Haskins, I think there's a lot of people that are trying to read the tea leaves, so to speak, and say, oh, geez, if they're signing this guy, then maybe that means Ben's retiring. But then there's the flip side. Well, Ben's probably staying now, and, he could mentor this guy for a year, and then he retires, and then you got, Mason's still the guy, but then he's a number two. I mean, have you been able to look through this at all, or are you just seeing it for what it is right now?
I mean, the way I always look at depth signings like this, and that's absolutely what it is. If they had a serious interest in him being a quarterback that was definitely going to make the team, they would have signed him to more than a reserve futures deal. Like Ben mentioned, reserve futures deal is what you sign potential practice squad candidates to. So this was a depth upgrade. So it's not a question of, does Dwayne Haskins replace Ben Roethlisberger? It's probably not even a question of, does Dwayne Haskins replace Mason Rudolph? Because I'm not sure at this point if he's better than Rudolph. But it's a question of, is Dwayne Haskins better than Josh Dobbs? Is he better than Doc Hodges? And the answer to those questions might be yes. And Dobbs is a pending free agent too. So, the Steelers typically like to have 4 quarterbacks with them through the offseason and through training camp. So, we have 3 under contract right now with Roethlisberger, Rudolph, and Haskins. So I'm looking at it for what it is you improve the depth of your quarterback room. And as we saw 2 years ago, which as much as we'd like to forget it, sometimes those third guys in your quarterback room or the fourth guys in your quarterback room actually play. So, that's kind of how I'm looking at it. The Pep Hamilton thing I think is really interesting because he was kind of like the Andrew Luck whisperer. He was, before he came to the Colts, he was the wide receivers coach and then offensive coordinator at Stanford while Luck was there. And then the Colts brought him in after they drafted Luck to be their offensive coordinator. So kind of an interesting career path there. Then he went to the Browns for their disastrous 2016 year when they went 1-15. Then went to Michigan for 2 years, and I mean, for as much as we rip on Michigan and Harbaugh up there, I mean, he did get Shea Patterson, who was not a great quarterback, on 2 award watch lists that season. So they in both of those seasons that he was at Michigan and he was the quarterbacks coach there, an assistant head coach. I think they were, typical Michigan seasons. They scored a lot of points at the beginning of the year, pretty much won all their games, and then lost to Ohio State, and then lost to an SEC team in a bowl game, just like Michigan does more or less every year. So, nothing atypical there. And then was also the head coach of the DC Defenders in the short-lived XFL, and then was the Chargers quarterbacks coach this year. So I agree. He has a track record of working with young quarterbacks, mostly pretty well. And he's actually been around the NFL for a while. His first NFL job was with the Jets back in 2003. I mean, he worked with Chad Pennington, for crying out loud, was there as his quarterbacks coach. Yeah. So it's not necessarily like, he's new.
Yeah, he's not new.
Right.
Yeah. One other guy that definitely slid under the radar last night and today because of all these other names and things going on was Keith Butler. And, Ben, I know you're not surprised that he's back as the defensive coordinator.
Nor do I believe that Tomlin's calling the defense. I think that's it.
You
watch the guy on TV relaying plays into the linebackers, and you think Tomlin's calling the defense. Okay. That doesn't make any sense. And I'm not even going to get into this further. It's just dumb. I know what Jerry Dulac said. I believe that Tomlin's on a headset and that he will overrule calls from time to time, both on offense and defense, but he's the head coach. He can do that.
Yeah. So you're, let me put it another way. Are you good with Butler being back for one more year?
I wish that they would hire an assistant outside linebackers coach, but other than that, I'm fine with it. I'd like to see him have some help there with running drills and whatnot. I love Butler's track record, obviously, with outside linebackers. Yes. I mean, he's had some stellar edge players. Stellar edge players. So I'm not going to argue that at all. However, I would like to see him get some help there. Beyond that, I'm fine with it. I kind of wonder what's going to happen with Terrell Austin interviewing as a DC and Tom Bradley not coming back. What they're going to do with the defensive backfield. That's another hole that Tomlin's got to fill. I kind of wonder what's going to go on a lot of places on that staff right now. It's not just about Butler, but some stability there is good.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. I think we all saw it coming, and it was not a surprise at all. And I agree with you. I think when coaches put more than one hat on, it creates problems. And I think based on people I've talked to is that when Matt Canada came in, Mason Rudolph was able to get a lot more individual work because Randy Fichtner was trying to wear both hats as the OC and the quarterbacks coach. So, I think that's a good example. Ryan, I want to ask you, Butler, is he as kind of aw shucks as you see him on his weekly pressers and stuff? He strikes me as such a laid back, folksy guy.
Oh man, I might not be able to be on the show after this, but both Randy and this is my Randy Fichtner appreciation time. Great person, great coach. Not all his fault. And it stinks because he's a good guy. But Butts is exactly what you see every coordinator Thursday or whatever day they do it now. He is just laid back as can be. But he's a great coach, and I mean the numbers don't lie. They've led the league in sacks 4 years in a row now. Mm-hmm. Third in total defense this past year, second in turnovers, first in sacks. You were talking about Terrell Austin. Remember a couple years ago when he came on board, and the chatter was, he's just going to be Keith Butler's replacement eventually.
Yeah.
Well,
sure.
Was that to maybe say, hey, Keith, you're on the hot seat? Or, because obviously, I mean, we all don't know what goes on from day to day in the coaching operations and whatnot. But I'm glad Keith Butler's back. He's been here a long time. I think consistency is key. But I will say this, last two playoff games, they've given up 45 and 48.
Yep.
Yeah, but guys, I'm sorry to cut you off, Ryan. I want to make a point about the 45 and the 48 here, okay? A lot of those points were due to turnovers that were directly related to turnovers. Turnover points that were directly related to short fields. And when we say 45 and 48 points, we've got to bear that in mind. 21 points on turnovers in both the last two playoff games really kill the offense, kill the defense. You put yourself in a hole. You're down 28-0 or 21-0 in the first quarter, respectively, those last two games. You're not putting yourself in a position where you can win the damn game. I don't care if your offense does get cooking late. It doesn't matter. So I fault him to a point. Certainly, and you may have been getting to this, Ryan, where he's covering a number one wide receiver with a linebacker. That drives me insane. But, other than that, I can't throw a lot of stones at the defense when they're out on the field because the offense can't sustain a drive and they're already in a hole when they get out there. So their mindset has to be, oh my God, we got to make something happen. We got to make something happen. We got to make something happen. Mm-hmm. You can't just play your game then.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I as is always the case, the numbers don't lie, and you got to peel back the layers on the onion sometimes to see what really goes on in a game. And for sure, the offense did not help in either of those last two situations. Just a reminder, everybody, you're listening to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by Deck Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. And whether you are in the market for condos or private homes, any of that good stuff, they serve Broward County and the Palm Beach counties down there. So check them out, Deck Roofing Incorporated at deckroofing.com.
You can tell that Steel Dad's sober when he says roofing correctly instead of roofing.
Did I say roofing?
You said roofing.
You did.
Roofing?
Yeah.
Roughing? Roofing? I don't know. So, Ryan, what typically goes on with the Steelers right now? We know, and I think a lot of knowledgeable Steelers fans are trying to set the table for other Steelers fans, and everybody's just kind of prefacing, hey, look, this is going to be a really, really crazy offseason because of the cap situation and the number of guys that are free agents. And so, and I know it's hard for you because you've seen change there at the Steelers before when you were there, but what is it like in this particular situation when you could have so much turnover? I mean, these are guys, they're people, they're human beings. You build relationships with these guys. And to see them come and go is not always easy, is it?
Yeah, I think back to like when's the last time the Steelers were sort of at like a major crossroads, and I would say their last losing season, 2003, they were 6-10, and they draft Ben Roethlisberger the next year.
That was a bad year.
Yes,
we used season tickets. I sat through that year, and I vividly remember that. That was Tommy.
But now here's my point being is that the Steelers haven't had a losing season since 2003, and just that model of consistency has been incredible. Kudos to the Rooneys, Kevin Colbert and company, and Coach Tomlin, and even Coach Cowan in his couple years prior to Coach Tomlin being hired. I'm trying to think back to my time there. Maybe that 2012 season. Coming off of the Tebow game, there were a lot of veterans on both sides of the ball that you just didn't know were coming back. Bruce Arians, quote, retired.
Right.
Todd Haley comes on board. There was major shuffling, but they went 8-8, and that year was the only time that they were eliminated prior to Week 17 under Mike Tomlin.
It's incredible.
Next year they were 0-4, then 2-6. ended up 8-8, and Ryan Suckup missed a field goal. So I look at this like, we're not going to knock on wood, but like, we're not talking even with major decisions that have to be made. You have to think Ben is coming back. And I know their schedule is a lot tougher this year, but I think everybody just needs to cool their jets and relax and let this all play out.
Yeah.
I know that's easier said than done, especially,
sure,
ending the season the way it did. But, the Steelers are one of the most consistent franchises, not only in professional football, but professional sports. They have, amazing talent, not only players, but staff and personnel, and they'll do it right. But there are definitely major questions this year as opposed to other years. And like I said earlier, are they bringing in a coordinator just for Ben, or are they looking towards the future? And they have a lot of free agents. I'm looking at the free agents list right now. So, guys come and go. This might be one of those times where more go in a season, in an off season, I should say, than normally. But yeah, I think everything's going to be fine. Most teams don't really plummet, especially a team like the Steelers that has been so consistent for years. So,
true.
I know people aren't patient, but it'll all play out, and then we'll see where we're at for training camp.
Yeah, you sound like the voice of reason, which Steeler Nation needs. That's for darn sure.
No,
just a little. Hey,
really?
real quick, Ryan. What's Arians like? What kind of guy is he?
Don't
worry, we're not holding.
No. I mean, I got along with Bruce. I would like to say that, like, he's a character. He's definitely a character. I want to say, like, the other day they panned in on him and he had the mask on, and he kind of looked like he had like a Vader, like I don't know if Darth Vader's the correct thing, but like he just like looked like a character. He got that hat on, and he looks like he's got this like, this vest, and he's got his mask, and like I just laughed because like you could see his lips were moving, but his mask was on. You couldn't tell, but like I have seen that so many times in practice. Like he's a great coach. He was very well liked, and he's really smart. And he does. I know sometimes he says things that sort of gain traction in the media, and then he's like, I don't know. And then he's like, I don't know why you're making a big deal out of it, but he's a good guy and a good coach, and I will not admit if I'm rooting for the Buccaneers or not.
Well, yeah, that's fair. He strikes me as a guy. Oh well, no, I'm not either. But
I'm
not either. I'm
for
not
sure.
either.
When they signed Tom Brady, that was over.
Arians just he cracks me up. In fact, I noticed he was going without the glasses for a good part of the game on this past weekend, which was odd. But he just cracks me up.
I mean that would be a pain in the ass about wearing a mask.
Yes,
would be if you wear glasses, they fog up constantly.
No, I get it.
You got to wear the glasses over the mask. You push like the top. I wear glasses every day. You push the top of the mask up a little bit on your nose, and you put your glasses like on top of the fabric of the mask, and then they won't fog up.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Yeah, see, it's this type of thing that people come to this.
Real quick.
Yeah,
I don't even wear glasses, but
Neither do I.
Yeah,
well, but I wear contacts. I kind of wear glasses sometimes, but not usually.
Yeah. I mean, it's just these are the things that people come to this
you wear
podcast
glasses? For. How did I not know this?
What? How'd you not know that?
Well, I've actually met Ian. We've sat around and drank, and I don't know you.
Well, no, we're going to keep it that
way. I was wearing contacts that day we met, Ben, because it was a sunny day and I was wearing sunglasses. So
it was a great day.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful day.
Ian, we were talking with Ryan a little bit about just the tumult that the Steelers are likely to go through this season or this off season, I should say. And just how different things it'll be, and you have like a unbelievable memory when it comes to these things. And when do you last remember the Steelers kind of having a turnover that they could, and I stress could, possibly have this year? When do you go back to the last time it was like this?
Boy,
2011.
Yeah, I'd say 2011, 2012, 2013 time frame. I mean, they really kind of rebuilt the team. Obviously Roethlisberger stayed, but other than that, right. They kind of rebuilt the offense around him. Starting with like drafting Pouncey in 2010 was when they started rebuilding the offensive line, because they finally figured out that, they can't let Ben just get sacked 45 to 50 times a year anymore, or else he'd be out of the league pretty quickly. I know Ryan said some nice things about Bruce Arians. I have my own opinions about Bruce. That Bruce is a mediocre offensive coach who has been fortunate enough to be on some of the best defensive teams around in the past.
That's a pretty damn good quarterbacks too.
Yeah, but he's also a guy that players love. So
they do.
He's doing some things right. That's all I'm saying.
He is, but if you wanna look at the numbers of it, right? That Arians has had a let's say top 8, right? Top 25% of the league. He's had a top 8 offense 4 times in his 1, 2, 3. I should have counted this before I started this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're doing math.
All right, he's been either an offensive coordinator or a head coach for 17 years. He's had a top 8 offense for those 17 years, and had a top 8 defense in 9 of those 17 years.
There we go.
So yeah, I mean,
it's a team game. It's a team game.
It's a team game, but he's known as an offensive coach that has been fortunate enough to be on some pretty darn good defenses. I mean, you look at the Steelers' defenses while he was here in total defense, so yards overall, they were first, fifth, second, first, and then he went to Indy. In scoring defense while he was with the Steelers, they were second, first, 12th, first, and first. He only had 1 year with the Steelers where the offense was even in the top 10 in yards, and it was never in the top 10 in points. So, I mean, you guys are right. Players love him. He says good things in the media. He's accessible to the media. So the media
says good things in the media. Okay.
he says quotable, printable headline material.
Yeah, he's overly honest with the media. Okay, yeah. That's cool.
That's what I meant, was that he's accessible to the media, so the media guys love
media
him.
Likes him because they always get some good quotes.
Exactly. It's spot on. I couldn't have said it better. Yes.
And so clearly, Ian, you'll be rooting for Green Arians. There we go. That's what I thought.
Yeah. The Bay of Pigs NFC Championship game, if you will, to go back to the old NFC Central rivalry.
Loved it.
But to get back to your question, Mark, about when we've had this kind of upheaval, I think one of the biggest things that we've got to look at too is just the salary cap situation that the Steelers are facing. And there's going to be, it's going to be a bloodbath this year league wide, trying to get down to whatever the number is. If it's, 175, 185, 188, whatever you want to pick. I mean, we were up over 200 million for the salary cap. And if league-wide teams have to make cuts like this, the Saints are going to be almost $100 million over the salary cap. This was their last year to go for it. You want to talk about a disappointing run. People harp on Tomlin for making 2 Super Bowls with Ben. Sean Payton only made 1 with Drew Brees. So, and people want to talk about the talent that Tomlin had. The Saints arguably had a Hall of Fame quarterback, the best running back in the league in Alvin Kamara, and the best wide receiver in the league in Mike Thomas. So, and a pretty darn good defense to go with that combination. But there's going to be some big time cuts around the league, and the Steelers are going to have to make some tough decisions too, especially with some veteran guys.
Yeah.
Your Joe Haydens, your Vince Williams, your Marquise Pouncey's, your David DeCastros. All these guys are over 30 years old. They've given a lot to the team. They've been great players, and I mean, I have a DeCastro jersey hanging in my closet, so like I hate to see any of these guys go. But at the same time, the NFL is a business, and the Steelers are $21 million over the projected cap, and they're going to have to make some tough decisions. So it's going to be a tough year just trying to, kind of fit into that, thread the needle of, working guys in with the cap, restructuring contracts, maybe extending some guys. The real solution to Ben Roethlisberger is not to cut him or for him to retire, is to give him a 2-year extension. Give him the Tom Brady deal and turn his salary this year into a signing bonus to stretch that out over 3 years, and you could save $10 million, $11 million off the cap right like that.
12.
Yeah. I'll let you people talk math later. Ryan, one thing that did come out this week from the league too is that the NFL Combine was not going to happen the way we've all been accustomed to it. And you were around the Steelers during so many different draft lead-ins and processes and things like that. How does this change things for the Steelers going forward, knowing that you're not going to be in that one centralized location? I mean, does this just put like all the eggs in the pro day basket, so to speak?
The good thing about that is that Coach Tomlin and Kevin Colbert were just as excited / interested / doing their due diligence when it came to pro days as they did the Combine. The Combine, to me, I've always just thought the Combine was there for entertainment. Obviously it's just another area to analyze during the draft process. But Tomlin and Colbert were always at pro days. I'm going to share a story and I've talked about this before, but I think it was my last year there. I was talking with Kevin Colbert, and we were talking about the late, great Bill Nunn, who could be in the Hall of Fame, who should have been in the Hall of Fame 10 years ago. Rest in peace. Mr. Nunn was awesome. But we were talking about how, back in the day when Mr. Nunn was scouting, that all that information wasn't available. And Kevin was talking about how now, the scouting process is just so homogenized. Everybody has the same information. Everybody has the same medicals. You're watching somebody run a 40, in Lucas Oil Stadium, but so is 50 million Americans. That number is probably way high, but so everybody sees the same. Everybody sees the same thing almost. So, I think the Combine is great, but it's just another tool that scouts use. And it will suck because it definitely is enjoyable. Usually around that time, you're craving some NFL action, and you're seeing these young up and comers try to etch their name in Combine lore, and then hopefully get drafted or pick up on a rookie free agent contract. But I don't think it's going to be as big as an issue for the Steelers as it may be for other teams.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I would think because they've been around the block, so to speak, so many times.
Isn't the biggest thing they're going to lose from losing the Combine? Isn't it just going to be that the fact that they're not going to have that medical information that they all have access to? They're going to have to pull guys in and give them physicals individually.
Yeah. So,
am I missing something here? I mean, other than that, like you pointed out, basically it's become homogenized. They have 2 workouts. They have the Combine, and then they have their pro day. They're all videoed. They know what the times are. They know what the weights are. They know what the lengths are. They know all those measurements. They watch the tape. The only thing that's missing now is they're not going to have that one collective spot where they can go to the guys and they can say, okay, this guy had a physical at the Combine and this is what the results were.
Yeah. And again, the Steelers have always done their homework, especially when it comes to pro days. So, I have full faith that the Steelers will be fine, but there will be other teams, maybe going through a transition or like a regime change with with new staff that might not know the ins and outs of obtaining that information. But I will say this, and obviously we've sort of been virtual for almost a year now.
Yeah.
But you see Mike Tomlin in a light that his players don't see it, or vice versa. So like you see Tomlin in a media interview, and you think, okay, he doesn't say much. He has his quite frankly's and wouldn't be prudence and obviously, but he's totally different
and things of that nature.
And so forth. But I really do think that there's something that comes with like, shaking somebody's hand or looking into, someone's eyes and saying like, we like you, we want to draft you in person versus, having a Zoom meeting with them. I think that that's the one thing that all teams are going to have to deal with because, even last year we were still sort of new to that. But now we've been virtual for a year now. I think that, teams better be sharp and figure out persuasive ways to get, kids on board or get players on board. I mean, I would want to be drafted to any team. I don't really care, but it's just different. It's just different not being able to actually talk to someone in person.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to ask, Ian, to bring you in on it, that you are losing that personal edge to it. And then when you consider the fact that, the Steelers, and again, very much on the cheap, no real risk to them, are bringing in Dwayne Haskins, who obviously there's a character issue there that's recent. And the Steelers have done a pretty good job in recent drafts of staying away from that. Does this open the door for them to maybe take higher risk kids because of this, or are they still going to try to do everything they can to take upstanding citizen types?
I think one other thing, just to add to Ben's point about what you lose without the combine, is you lose having all of the, or not all, a vast majority of potential draftees in one space where you can just talk to them real quickly, have a side conversation with them for a couple minutes, things like that have to you probably work through their agents to set up Zoom calls, set up interviews with them. It's going to be a lot more formal in some respects. You can't just grab a guy who's waiting in line and have a conversation with them for a couple minutes. Or who just did a drill and just talk to him on the side. You're going to lose, the Steelers have for years talked about guys they took to dinner and how much they either impressed them or didn't impress them. Probably the case of certain Baylor players that some other Steelers websites were convinced that we were going to draft and then fell all the way to the Bengals in the fourth round. But we won't mention names. Nevertheless, but they took that guy out to dinner, and I keep thinking, how horrible must that dinner have been that, that they didn't even touch him for 4 rounds.
He never used his napkin. It was atrocious.
Yeah. So you lose some of that, but also, to your question, that a lot of what it seems like the Steelers have relied on, especially for their first round picks, is connections they trust, right? So you took TJ Watt, who was coached at Wisconsin by Paul Chryst, who used to be the coach at Pitt that worked in the same building as Mike Tomlin for years and had a very good working relationship, right? We've taken guys from Ohio State over the years because we've had good relationships with their program. Recently, guys from Michigan that we've had some good relationships with their program that, a lot of times, and I think Ryan's point is very well taken, that Kevin Colbert's been in the game for a long time. Tomlin's been in the game for a long time. They have connections at these schools, and not necessarily with head coaches or even assistant coaches, but even just staff people in the buildings that they can trust to call up and say, hey, is this guy a problem in the locker room? Or, is this guy keep up with his stuff in class? Is he a good citizen? I think that goes a long way versus some teams that are going through, like Ryan said, regime changes where they're getting a new GM, a new scouting staff on board that may be pulling guys from a bunch of different places that might not have worked together yet. Whereas the Steelers are a pretty well-oiled staffing machine. Not only they know, what area scouts they have going to scout which players at what pro days, but also, have good established connections at a lot of schools, and especially MAC schools. I mean, we've landed some gems out of the MAC in recent years, that we've done a really good job scouting that area too. So, having good connections at schools to do some of that character background research that you probably aren't going to get from a 15-minute Zoom call, because people can fake things during an interview. It's real easy to give the right answers to questions. But, when you start to ask, their coaches, their assistant coaches, their position coaches, their, the secretaries, were they respectful when they walk in the building, things like that. That's when you start to get real answers and real pictures of what kind of people these guys are.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think they're going to miss some of that stuff. But with the experience they have, I have a lot of faith in it. So, guys, as we wind things down here, we are down to the final four of the NFL season, and ironically, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I believe, will have, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Packers on the schedule next year. In fact, they play at all three of those stadiums, if I'm not mistaken. And that's terrific. That's terrific. So, Ben, who do you got advancing to the Super Bowl this weekend?
Packers, Chiefs.
Packers, Chiefs, a replay of Super Bowl 1 or 2.
Hoping for the Bills, but Packers, Chiefs.
Okay, all right, Ryan. Who do you got, man?
I'm definitely not coming on the show after this. I've been thinking about this all week, but I'm going with my gut. I got the Bills winning 34-27.
Oh,
and I got
wow.
I got the Packers winning 27-24, and I think the Buffalo Bills are a great story. And listen, I love Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Tyler Matakevich. Shout out to Tyler Matakevich if he's listening.
Yeah, Dirty Red.
But I don't see anybody stopping Aaron Rodgers. He is on the why did they draft a quarterback tour. And I think the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl.
Wow, that's tough to follow, Ian.
Hope you're right about the Bills. I really hope you're right about the Bills.
So, yes. All right. Here's the thing. Since November 1st, when the Chiefs beat the Jets 35-9, the Chiefs have actually not beaten any other team by more than one score. They've played. They lost to the Chargers when they didn't start anyone. But other than that, they've won 8 one-score games in a row. And we've talked very early in the show about how there's always some regression to the mean, and at some point it comes back to bite you. It seems like the Chiefs' MO this season, kind of like what happened against the Browns in the divisional round, was that they get up early and then just kind of cruise and hold on at the end to win. I mean, they did that against Carolina, where Carolina missed a 60-some-yard field goal. They got up big on Tampa Bay, and Tampa stormed back at the end. The final score there was 27-24, but the Chiefs still wound up on top. And it's happened a few other times on them too, against the Saints as well. But on the other hand, you have the Bills, and since Thanksgiving, the Bills have won every game since before Thanksgiving, since they lost to the Cardinals on that Kyler Murray.
That's right. That's right.
But since then, the Bills not only won 8 in a row, but they've won all but their wild card game against the Colts. That was the only game they played that was closer than 10 points. So they've won. Yeah, the Bills have been blowing teams out down the stretch, while the Chiefs have been kind of barely squeaking by. So it's a very interesting kind of confluence of storylines here that, you know, the Chiefs were hyped up all season, defending champions. They're 14-2. They're the number 1 seed. They got the bye, all that stuff.
Yep.
But actually over the last, since Thanksgiving, over the last 2 months, the Bills have been the better team. I mean, the Bills have played really well and beat the crap out of teams. I mean, you know, they stomped all over the Dolphins in the last week of the season in a game the Dolphins needed to win to make the playoffs. So, you know, and I mean, Buffalo handled us pretty darn well. I'd love to see Buffalo win. I really have a hard time. I have a hard time picking against Patrick Mahomes, though. I mean, he's just been so darn good. And my gut says it's probably going to be the Chiefs and the Packers. Although the Buccaneers did handle the Packers pretty well earlier this season. They stomped all over. I mean, it really depends on the Bucs defense. If they're getting a pass rush with 4 and able to drop 7, it's going to get a lot harder on Aaron Rodgers. And if Green Bay can't run the ball, they're going to be in trouble. I mean, Aaron Jones has kind of been, I don't want to say the unsung hero. He was like top 5 in the league in rushing yards this season, but you know, Aaron Rodgers had an MVP type season. Everyone wants to talk about him. But Green Bay doesn't have a lot of receiving options if they can shut down Devontae Adams either. So I think that one will be close. I'd much prefer to see Green Bay and Buffalo be in the Super Bowl. But I'll go with Green Bay and Buffalo. Why not?
All right.
Yeah, we'll go with Green Bay and Buffalo.
Yeah, you said everything I was going to say about Buffalo and Kansas City. I think Kansas City's been playing with fire. I think I don't know how healthy Mahomes is going to be. I think he'll clear protocol probably tomorrow. Everything will be fine. But man, there's just something about Buffalo. I don't know. They're just playing well. I mean, that city would absolutely burn if they go on to win a Super Bowl. I can tell you that right now. You'd have what, like 500,000 people all doing a flop on a table at the same time, and I would love to see that. So yeah, I think Buffalo finds a way in a close one, and then I think the Green Bay Tampa Bay is going to be real close too, and I'll go ahead and say Green Bay just because they got home field advantage, but. Anyway, that's going to be it for us tonight. And obviously we're getting ready to start the draft profile stuff, start looking at some of these young men who could be Pittsburgh Steelers come April. And we'll start cranking those out as well. And again, just big thanks, Ryan. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And we wish you the best and hope everything's going well for you. And we will make sure that it is not 2 years. I cannot believe it's been 2 years.
Hasn't been 2 years, really?
That's what he said. I can't believe it's been 2 years.
Yeah, confirmed.
Right? He confirmed it. Yeah. Isn't that stunning?
That is bizarre.
I know. I feel terrible.
It's all your fault.
Well, clearly, but always is. What can I tell you? Anyway, thanks again, Ryan, for being here. And for Ian and Ben, this is Steel Dad signing off on the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast presented by Deck Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. And hey, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.